Right, today I'm only going to be using two sets. Okay, so this set, the Blossoming Lily, I'm actually only using the sentiment here, the thinking of you sentiment, and all will become clear as to why I'm using that. You can use absolutely any sentiment you want, but for me, for this card today, this sentiment just fitted perfect. I'm using this die set, this wonderful, fabulous die set that Lisa's just released as a standalone item, and I'm using these two dies here. And this is where we're headed. Now, I think it looks really effective, and for something that looks this good but only takes a couple of items, I think is a perfect sort of card for batch making. So, you know, we all have those cards that we have to make from time to time that nobody likes making. So if you've got an opportunity to just make a few, put them to one side so that you've always got them to hand, then I think that's a great idea. So this panel here is done using distress inks, not oxides, ordinary distress inks. And I wanted to use distress because I wanted to show you that they blend just as nicely as the oxides, but in a completely different way. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do first, this panel here. So if I bring my card blank in, and you'll see I've already put my tape in place to make my panel here. Now I'm going to just press my tape down so that it sits my card on my mat, and then I'm going to put a piece of paper up here so that I don't get any ink above my panel, which is what I did here, because I didn't do that when I was doing this one, and I've sort of spoilt it a bit, and I really don't want to add anything to the card. Just be mindful that when you're using distress inks, they're not as easy to get rid of if you make a mistake. With the oxides, you'd probably be able to rub it out because it's a sort of a chalky finish, and it sort of sits on top of the card. This will sink into your card, so it won't be as easy to get rid of. Okay, so make sure that you cover all your blank cards so that you don't get any ink on it. Alright, now I'm using 3 colours, and I'm using Twisted Citron, Salty Ocean and Squeezed Lemonade, and really it was just a yellow, a blue and a green that I wanted to use. Obviously you could use any sort of colour combinations that you wanted to use. That's entirely up to you, entirely your choice. Do a few of each, do some sort of lighter coloured ones, more feminine colours if you need, you know, cards for sort of a feminine sort of thinking of you or whatever. But you can adapt this style to any sort of card, so that you've got a stash of cards ready to send, you know, quick birthday card or anything like that. It's just a perfect way to batch make your cards. So I'm using sponges, and the reason I'm not using my brushes is because I don't want to contaminate my ink pads. So I'm starting with my yellow, and I'm coming off the tape and literally just rubbing it onto my card. Don't worry about the bits, I'm going to brush those off in a minute. That's because I'm using sponges that I've had for quite a while, and they've sort of dried out a little bit, and the bits are sort of the residue off the sponges, but don't worry about it because they will disappear, I promise you. Okay, so that's my yellow. I'll just get rid of all my bits. Then I'm going to go in with my green, and you'll see that with oxides they sort of blend together so that they change the colour of the ink underneath. These don't. These will sit on top of the ink colour underneath, but they will still blend in a way that gives you a different colour finish, if you get me. You'll see what I mean when I've finished. You have to excuse the state of my sponges. You wouldn't believe, but they are clean because I have washed them, but the ink doesn't come out that brilliantly, so that's why they look such a mess. And I am being really, really random with this ink, as you can see. Now, when I've done this, I'm sort of a bit It's a bit too blue. So what I'm going to do, and this is the only other problem, is with distress inks and sponges, makes a mess of your hands. But, you know, it's only ink, it'll come off eventually. So, okay, I've gone back in with the yellow, and the yellow is going to sit on top of this blue. But you see how it changes the colour from, so that blue there was quite bright, and it was a bit too bright for me. So I'm just going to add a little bit more green, because now it's a little bit too yellow, but not very much green. And you won't get the same effect twice doing this. You'll get similar effects because obviously you're using the same colours every time, but because you're sort of placing the ink randomly, you won't get the same effect twice. You'll get a similar effect, just not exactly the same. So don't think, oh, I'll make loads of cards and they'll all be the same and I can send them all out to, sort of like if you were using them for invitations or something. You know, if you want them all to look exactly the same, then this technique won't work because they won't look exactly the same. Okay, so that's my inking done. Now I want to make this look a little bit more interesting. So I'm just putting some water in my hand. Just drop the water onto the ink like so. Okay, now you could let that dry naturally if you want, but obviously I'm doing a demo, so I can't let it dry naturally, otherwise we'd just be sitting here twiddling our thumbs for ages, and that's no good, is it? Because that's just boring. I think that looks really good. Now you can either leave it like that. If you're not happy with how many little splodges you've got on there, you could add a few more. And it really is as simple as picking the water up and just splatting it where you need it, and then drying it off with a kitchen towel. Now you're drying the water off, okay? But that's going to be wet, and that's going to stay damp for quite some time. So if you now go in with an ink pad on top of that, if you try and stamp a sentiment, for example, your sentiment may bleed because that card is wet. So what I would say is put that to one side. This is why I think it's perfect for batch making, because you could have a line of these, do each bit, and by the time you've done the last one, the first one will be dry, and then you can start the next part of the process. Okay, so perfect for batch making in my opinion. So put that to one side, just get rid of that ink off there because I don't want that spoiling my finished item. And then obviously, true Blue Peter style, here's one I did yesterday. So there's my panel. Okay, now before I go any further, I am just going to add some black lines to the edge of the panel, and that's really just to make the panel stand out a little bit more, just so that it's sort of a bit more prominent, if you like. Doesn't have to be exact. I'm using Lisa's fabulous fine liner pens. These amazing, fabulous colours. I did think about using a green actually, but then I thought no, it won't stand out enough. So that's why I've gone with the black, because I don't think you can beat black for sort of making things, just finishing things off and making them pop a little bit. So just do my other two lines here. I mean, how quick is this? I've nearly finished. Okay, so my two lines, and that's it. That's all I'm going to do to make it sort of pop off the card. Okay, now then I'm going to stamp my sentiment first, because stamping my sentiment first will give me an idea of where I want to put my flowers. So just inking up my sentiment, and I'm only stamping this in black. I'm not shadow stamping this one because I really don't think it needs it, and I think it would look just a little bit too fussy, and I'm not sure what colour I would use to make it stand out, because when I've done shadow stamping before, it's been on a white background and you can really see it. Okay, And these stamps just give such a beautiful crisp image. And I use the sentiments from every stamp set that I've got. Every stamp and die set that I've got, I find that I use the sentiments more than the main item, because the sentiments are amazing and they just look fabulous on a card. So my last two little bits are these. Now this is the thing that I've used that isn't really available anymore, and that's why I haven't sort of shouted about it. But you could use anything. I mean, you could, if you were using oranges and yellows or something like that, or sort of reds and oranges, but you could use a bee, or a tiny little bird stamp, or anything that just sort of gives it that little bit of interest. Now on here you'll see that I put it next to my wildflower stems. On this one I'm going to place it over here, and I'm going to let it sit a little bit proud of the panel, because I want it to be with this. I wanted it to be with this on this one, and I just put it in completely the wrong place. So for me, that's why I'm putting it here today. And of course I'm using Lisa's fabulous glue, so it's going there. Now you'll notice I've shaped it a little bit, because I didn't want it to be totally flat on the card. I just wanted it to have a little bit of dimension, which was why I've only put the glue in those two tiny weeny places on the wings. So you see it's got a little bit of dimension to it. This one has as well, but not quite as much. But because I've only used a tiny bit of glue, I just need to hold it down a little bit till that glue grabs. Believe me, once it's grabbed you won't get it off. And how do I know this? Because I've tried. Okay, so then my two die cut flowers, and as I said, I've cut these out of Lisa's amazing satin card. Don't they just look? You don't need anything else, do you? When you've got those, you don't need anything else. Now I'm putting it that way because I want this one down first, and I want the longer stem to come over the top of the shorter stem. Personal preference, don't ask me why, I just think it looks nicer, and I love the way they cross over, so they're not straight. You could of course do this the other way and put your panel down the side, so you could do it sort of so that your panel was like that. Instead, put your panel further over this side, and perhaps put your flower maybe in black, just one flower stem, so put just this one flower stem maybe in black. You could use both, and then you could put your sentiment over here that goes over the panel and the white space. It's just a different way of sort of adding your elements to your card. Okay, so I've decided where I'm going to put these, so let's just glue these into position. But you can see, if you were having a day where you just wanted to just sit and make some cards all the same, could be birthday cards, could be invitations, could be anything, this would be the sort of thing that you could do, and it's so quick and easy that you'd have, you know, quite a lovely batch of cards by the end of your crafting session, and it's not going to take you very long at all. See, I put too much glue on there, but it dries clear, so nobody's going to see it anyway. And then I'm just going to add the other one on top. Now, I haven't put pads on these. I haven't sort of put any dimensional parts to these flowers, because to me, A, they're not big enough to put any dimension on anyway, and I just think if you're making batch cards, to stop and add 3D pads on sort of defeats the object a little bit. So that's why I've gone with just putting them flat. And personally, I think on this occasion, whilst I know I've said to you I always try and give my cards a bit of height and a bit of dimension by adding 3D glue pads or 3D glue gel, I think sometimes you just don't need it. So just pop that down there. It doesn't matter if some of the leaves overlap, nobody knows that they shouldn't have done. I mean, how easy is that and how effective does that look? And then right at the last minute, I'll just crease my card. I will go over and crease it again when this glue is properly dry and the flowers are safe. But you can see how quickly you could come up with a batch of cards that you've got ready to just give out. This could say happy birthday. It could say no end of things, but the principle is the same. And I've tried to use colours that I don't normally use. I mean, I'm a sort of a pinks and purples kind of girl. So these colours are sort of a little bit out of my comfort zone. So I thought I would try and do something a little bit different colour-wise. So that's it really. And then I shall add something to this one. I might add it this way and put it in the group. So I've just added the 3 cards that I've made, and as I said I would, I've just done the other one the other way around so that you can see how different it looks. And I've actually cut the flower on this one in the blue satin card just to make it look a little bit different. So thanks very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.